Mr. James Scarlett, we go again. How are you, pal?
I'm very good, mate. How are you?
Dynamite. Absolute dynamite. Happy to see your face again.
Yeah, I'm excited to be back as always. Really enjoying ourselves, aren't we? I think.
Wait, absolutely, absolutely. And thank you everyone who's stuck with us for all the kind feedback, all the messages, all the questions. It's been great. Everything is trending upwards.
It
And
is.
as I say, we're got Stephen Bartlett, Shagged Married Annoyed. We're coming after Shagged Married Annoyed. You see us in an arena sometime soon, bitching at each other.
Amazing. Yeah, tell your friends. Tell your friends about the podcast. If you're enjoying it,
If you're
give us a
enjoying it.
share. Share it on your Facebook or Instagram or whatever.
Yes,
Yeah,
do
we
that.
want more people to hear it, so please do.
In this episode, we are going to discuss breaking bands, basically our role and what we play and helping bands develop their careers. But as is your want, you love a wee quick Q&A to get started, don't you?
I do. I do. I like the questions. I've got one here from John Gandy. He says, love the episode. How big of a risk did Heilung feel, given how different they are from anyone else? Context, I love Heilung, and then playing ATG was one of my lifetime gig-going highlights. So for anyone who doesn't know what this is about, Heilung are a like Nordic folk reenactment of like some old rituals. There's about 30 of them on stage. There's fire, there's 3,000-year-old instruments, there's lots of percussion, there's nudity, and just it's like watching a ritual for like 90 minutes. It's like a real like spectacle. So it was a big risk because they don't sound like really any of the other bands at ArcTanGent. But honestly, it wasn't really a big risk because the ArcTanGent audience is totally open. ArcTanGent audience is open to listening to, on the one hand, Opeth and Devin Townsend, and on the other hand, Mogwai, and everything that fits in between that. And then a load of mad left field genres taking you off down different alleyways. And Heilung is just another one of them. And it might have felt like a risk because they were the headliner, but I felt like it would work. I mean, they sold out like Brixton Academy in London, so they're a big band. I mean, it's not like something to be scared of for me.
It,
I'm like,
it, it is one of those ones because them and Wardruna were two bands that kind of came through in that scene, that sort of, let's just call it Viking metal, but not in the I'm on a Marth style, that proper like, try to stay true to their heritage, and as you say, with old instruments and they're great. And it's weird because I went to see I like to show Vikings, the actual History Channel show, and I believe the singer from Wandrina played a cameo on it, and I went to see them. I think Joe Quayle was supporting, and I was already preset to be like, come on to grips, man. This is proper. This is proper weirdo material, and it was fucking brilliant. It was
yeah,
absolutely brilliant. And then I saw Heilung, and you're like, saw them a wee bit at Hellfest, and I saw them at Barrowlands before I finally saw them at ATG. And honestly, that show, it doesn't matter how you start because by the time you end, you're all in. You're absolutely transfixed on this ritual, and they do it so well. You can see why it takes so many of them, and there's so much effort. I mean, you spoke previously about just how much goes into that performance with the fire and the warrior training and everything's in it. But you can see why right after you get your Meshuggahs and your Converges and your Explosions in the Sky and Mogwais and all this chat about Mars Volta, and then suddenly out of nowhere Heilung just drops onto the poster. So I mean, I wasn't at the time when I saw it. I thought, you know what, they're just so big, it would work regardless because they will bring their own fan base, even if ATG never accepted it. But ATG did because that tent that night was spectacular.
I at the end of their set, I was really waiting because they play a whole set with really no breaks. So there's no opportunity for the crowd. Obviously, there's no dancing, no singing from the audience. So you have no clue whether people are stood there thinking this is fucking shit or what. And so I waited till right at the end, and then the band stopped, and there's just like this cheer, the massive cheer went up, and it was like, oh yeah, people enjoyed that. That was
Yeah.
great.
Yeah,
Um,
but that point, because it's one of those ones, if you were to dip in for the first 5 minutes, potentially there to be like, aye, okay, a bit of style over substance, you know what I mean? But it is one of the ones when you really get going, it's great. I mean, I'm looking forward to the next time I see Heilung as well. But they're one of those bands that just get bigger and bigger. I actually saw them in a weird. They're on Glastonbury. They're playing
Yeah.
Glastonbury this year.
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean, like there's a booking. You know what I mean? Whoever thought who had that in their bingo card? Heilung to play Glastonbury.
Yeah, I mean, which and in a weird way it works. It was strange because at ArcTanGent, there's loads of like ancient burial mounds at ArcTanGent, and there's like a stone circle, and there's loads of old like hippie shit there, and yeah, the Heilung, some of their crew got chatting to the farmers, and they were loving the Heilung were really loving Fernhill Farm and its history, and they went up to the stone circle and did whatever you would do if you're in Heilung up at the stone circle. I don't know, some ritual. They sacrificed the goat in the stone circle. I don't know. That made that up.
Secondary drummer get absolutely somewhere buried in Fernhill Farm. But you know what? If that's what the performance needs, we can get more drummers. We can get more drummers.
Absolutely. I actually have to just give a tiny shout out to Miles because it was his idea. It wasn't my idea. He said to me one day, you should go left field and book Heilung for ArcTanGent as a headliner. It would be amazing. And I think he was right. So thanks, Miles.
A question I've got: what happened to the 7 dressing rooms when they weren't there? Did the other bands get to use them?
Yeah. So the other bands did get to use them, but we don't need, because if you think about it, it's not 7 dressing rooms; it's 7 for Heilung plus whoever else was playing that day. So we had, let's say, 11 dressing rooms.
Yeah.
So on the other days, you're mob-handed for dressing rooms. You don't need that many.
Had the mothers shown up like, here's your dressing room.
So yeah.
Brilliant. Right, so we'll do one more and then get into our talking ahead the mothers into our breaking bands sort of scenario. So Roddy McCann on the Damnation Forum, I believe, wrote, "What's your personal policies for inviting a band back for a second or even a third time? For instance, Bob Vylan are about to return to Trees for the 3rd year in a row, having jumped up the lineup each time, but I can't recall any big returns the following year for Damnation."
No, well, for me, again, I've said this in a few podcasts, but there is a big difference between ArcTanGent and Trees and Damnation in that we have a lot more bands, so it gives me more leeway to do whatever the fuck I want. And basically, if I want to book Bob Vylan again, I'm going to book them again. The bands that I really love that are British, I do tend to bring them back a lot. I want to help their career and I want to put them in front of people more. So I did it a lot with Black Peaks. I've done it a lot with the Excerpts and Soldier from Afar. Arcane Roots was another one that I really loved. I think 3 years running is a bit ridiculous, but this year was a special case because I had a Bob Vylan shaped hole at 2000 Trees where the Chats were headlining, and I had a slot underneath the Chats, and it felt like someone's like, I'm always criticizing Download for not promoting bands up their lineup, and it felt like, well, I've got an opportunity to just go fucking let's just shove Bob Vylan to the top. I mean, they had the biggest crowd last year on the main stage. They're playing in the daytime, and it was like the biggest crowd. So let's give them a push. So totally up for bringing bands back, and we do like a pre-night, an early entry night, and that's really what that's for nowadays. Everyone's favourite bands from this year will play on the Wednesday night next year at both festivals. That's how I do it.
Yeah,
you don't tend to repeat much, Gav, do you?
No. I mean, again, it's very easy for me to sit here and go, oh, absolutely not, and give you the whole spiel about because I'm such a perfectionist. And all lineups are so bespoke and curated. But the truth is, it's less than 30 slots. You know, you start repeating some of those bands year in year, it gets very repetitive. I mean, look at last year, Jesus Christ, we had a pre-show night of Salvation, which, let's face it, is now a second day of Damnation. Really, it's a full arena. It's right with a full production, but we had bands playing. They were doing a special set on an album set on the Friday, and then playing against the Saturday. Playing again the Saturday, and we took a wee bit of grief for that, so that's not even happening. But in the history of Damnation, I believe there's only one band that's ever returned year on year, and that was Solstifer. And the reason that band returns year on year is because we put them on a 3rd stage in 2013 or maybe 2014, and it was so ridiculously overpacked that there was queues right down the corridor at Leeds Met, and I felt like we owed it to Souls to Fair to come back and put them on the main stage, and owed it to the fans who had bought tickets that year to come and see that band who never get into the room. So that's the only reason that's been. It's not a policy as such. I mean, if I'm trying to think of an example where something just came back and it was like, you know what, it's just too good to miss. I mean, let's say we got offered a package and there was just a really, I mean, who played last year that's absolutely spectacular? I mean, let's say Julie Christmas, for example, right? And there's another package happening this year, and Julie Christmas is going to be sitting in a bus outside Damnation, and I'm going to say, on principle, no, Julie Christmas can't come in and like headline the third stage or do something a bit different. We would work, we'd find a way to work it out, but we don't actively go out looking to get the same bands year on year purely because there isn't that level, there isn't that amount of slots to not make it look so repetitive. Well, 2,000 Trees can just swallow up Bob Vylan, even for a third year, when moving up the same like, right, okay, but there's just so much going on about it that you're not going to notice. So there's no strict policy as such, but that is the difference between the two festivals. And I suppose leads is on quite nicely to the topic of this podcast, which is breaking bands and the role that we play in helping those bands up those lineups, if we give a shit or not. Like, how do you feel about it? Like, Bob Vylan's the perfect starting jumping off point. How do you feel about the fact that you guys have played such a big part in getting them up those bills?
I mean, I totally give a shit about it. I love the idea of taking. Often we're talking about British bands in this situation because that tends to be the bands you get when they're really, really new. I totally love the idea of. I don't think we're the ones breaking the bands, but we are part of the story, and we are able to give those bands like a bigger platform than some other festivals would be able to. Because I can stick them on. You know, I could stick Bob Vylan last year on the main stage at 2,000 Trees, or as I just said, I can push them up to the main stage. Like another example would be in 2015, I booked Idols, and we have a stage at 2,000 Trees called the New Stage, and it's basically like all day of like what the new hot bands are, and it's right next to the main stage, and it's intentionally next to the main stage because it means the crowds will be busy there. And I would basically was like, right, let's just make Idols the headliner. So Idols headlined that stage. As I said in another episode, paid them 100 quid, and now, I mean, fucking hell, they are massive, and their fee is equally massive. So I think that kind of, for me, at 2,000 Trees, building that, like it's happened with Nothing But Thieves, Slaves, now called Soft Play. We've done it. Like another one I'm hoping will eventually headline 2,000 Trees is Creeper. People often laugh at me when I say I like Creeper because they don't really fit with my music taste, the sort of music I listen to at home, but I absolutely love Creeper. And they're headlining the second stage at 2,000 Trees this year. First time I booked them was like 200 quid, tiny little slot in the cave, and they're just, yeah. Am I the person breaking the band? No, absolutely not. Is 2,000 Trees breaking the band? No, but definitely an important sort of cog, I think. I mean, do you feel that Damnation has that role at all?
You know what? No, I feel that 2,000 Trees does play a significant part of the reason you've got so many great examples. I mean, the proof's in the pudding a wee bit as well. Like, I mean, Frank Carter is another one, the Rattlesnakes and all. It's like, no, are you the one that goes, oh, I found a guy called Frank Carter? Obviously not. But when you're getting those slots and then other festivals going, oh, Jesus Christ, I've played the main stage and packed out 10,000 people, whatever it is, come to see them. And then it gives these bands that opportunity to continue. And 2,000 Trees just seems to have tons of them. I mean, tons of them in comparison to ArcTanGent, and then ArcTanGent's even get better. But Damnation doesn't, unfortunately. That scene, I mean, what would be your examples anyway? If you were even take Damnation in the picture, where are the bands that have just came, exploded, and went right up the bills? I mean, your Sleep Tokens or Bring Me the Horizon or Architects, I mean, not particularly Damnation bands. So what role does Damnation play? I mean, there was a band called Dialects, who I believe played one of your events as well back in the day. They're a Glasgow band, Glasgow post rock. They played Damnation about 2015, 2016 maybe. And I always remember them saying, because what impact you've got in a band, because you can see you can see there's a room full. Now you know that band played in a
Yeah.
pub in Bradford the night before to 60 people, and now they're playing to 1,000 people in Damnation's second or third stage. So that's an obvious. They've done a couple of grand in merch, which is more than they managed to do the full tour. Another obvious example of how you're helping a band progress. But after that, it's a bit of a guessing game. I mean, how many people gave them a listen in Spotify because they were on the bill? So when they came in and said, look, every time that we are mentioned in any post on Damnation, and I think it might have been ArcTanGent one year they played as well, they could see, they were obviously kind of bandit monitored their website and their traffic, and they could see the spike. So they're a bit like, there is another tangible from their side of it. Playing this event, even opening the third stage at Damnation, was significant to them because a lot of people were checking them out, whereas they weren't. So I think Damnation does play a role in getting these bands in front of people. I mean, we mentioned Coffin Mulch before as well. I mean, that's you walk into Damnation at noon, and that second arena takes 2,500 people, and pretty full for a Glaswegian death metal band. You know, it's like people. Damnation has built a reputation. If we book them, it's not for any other reason because they deserve to be there. And ultimately, you're going to walk in and try it.
But what about this for a Damnation example? So I'm going to test your knowledge of Damnation years now. What year did I see Amenra in the small, tiny little room?
2012.
Right. Okay. And also saw Bosk there in the same year?
Yes.
Right. Okay. So look, that's the first time I'd ever seen Amenra or Bosk. Now, both of those bands are significantly bigger now than they were then, right? There's no way Amenra would agree to play in a little room like that anymore.
Never.
They'd be on your main stage, and you'd be paying them a big chunky fee. And you know, Bosk have grown significantly as well. So who's responsible for that? Well, I think you got to take your part of that credit, just like I'm taking my little part of Bob Vylan's.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose in the UK,
because
you get, where you get those bookings that are almost before their time. I mean, that was the Amin Raz booking was before its time. I mean, like, you think of them now, and the crowd. I mean, last year's Damnation, arguably the biggest crowd the entire weekend, and how spectacular were in a 6,000 capacity venue. That was a 600 capacity room, which, if you recall, was half empty by the time. I mean, the Clash Royale Electric Wizard, it was a rough one for them to swallow, but I mean, the 300 people, including you and I, in that room at the time watching Amenra, like, holy shit, how good's this band? And that was definitely one of those ones where, you know what, maybe it did play a bit for their UK profile, just being on that poster, because there's definitely a benefit of cutting through some of the noise. You know, sometimes we talk about, like, you can be the best band in the world, but if you're not going to a radar and you're just being pitched as along with another 1,000 bands, it's tough. But if you work with an agent or a label that you've got a close relationship with, they'll maybe get onto your radar because of that. Now, I think that's what the role that Damnation plays with a lot of things. I think it's an easier chance of getting booked in a lot of festivals, European and UK, once you've been on Damnation, because that filter to get into Damnation is so difficult, because once you take away all the international bands, really, you're only left with 3 or 4 slots, and you're only getting those if you're fucking excellent. So once you've been on Damnation, obviously there's a bigger chance for you to go into other events.
Yeah. And the Damnation ArcTanGent world is the slow burn, isn't it? You're not trying to break in the same way that the latest hot Kerrang band is trying to break at 2,000 Trees. It is a different thing. And those bands can ascend quicker because there's Radio 1 play and there's much more Spotify support and Spotify playlists and stuff. And it's a more commercial sound aimed at more people. If you're in Coffin Mulch, you can fucking forget ever headlining Brixton Academy, can't you? but that doesn't mean that you can't do an Amenra and a Bosk and slowly grow. And I think we are an important part of that. And my version of what I do at ArcTanGent is, so the comparison here with 2,000 Trees and ArcTanGent is quite different. 2,000 Trees, new band stage. So all the new hot stuff goes on that stage, and there'll be some early slots on other bigger stages where those bands can play. Whereas at at Trees, I'm very much stuck in the billing war with agents. So the bands are in order on those stages in how big they are, and there's no real way around that. Whereas at ArcTanGent, I can do whatever I want. Most of them haven't got agents. So when I have a band that I really love and believe in, and I want more people to see them, I just put them on a bigger stage.
Yeah.
And I find that the most satisfying thing in the world. So Psychonaut, who I really love, great band on Pelagic Records, I was just like, fuck it, I'm just going to put them on the main stage. And it's like, why are they on the main stage? Well, they're on the main stage because I wanted to put them there. There's no other reason. Yeah, they're brilliant. I'm going to put them there. So the band this year is Hex Vessel. Hex Vessel just actually I'll recommend Hex Vessel later, but they're great. I really love them, and I'm putting them on the main stage because I think more people should see them. They're really quite unknown in ArcTanGent's world. They're unknown.
Yeah.
So
Hey,
basically just promote the bands, give them a good slot.
It's a weird subject to tackle because ultimately you want to show some humility and you don't want to be like you and I are. No matter how brash this podcast is, we're not arrogant people, and you don't want to say, "Oh, well, this band's made it because of that." But also at the same point, as I'm talking this through, if you play this game, then what's the point of listening? Almost because you need to put it out there. So I suppose an example of when the band's told me that I put them on a platform or Damnation put them on a platform is Dinner Celestial Birds. Now, Dinner Celestial Birds first came across our radar a year or so ago because there's a guy called Andy Gill who's a Damnation ever present and a great post-rock band, and he recommended them because of who he was. I went and checked him out, and I remember when I checked Spotify, it was 12 monthly listeners. 12 monthly listeners I had when I went to check out. I checked that again today, and it's over 1,000. You know what I mean? So we're not talking about rockets. They're no headlining Brixton Academy either, but for 12 to 1,000 is some jump. And if you speak to Andy Gill, his first point of reference for any praise is Damnation, and saying, "You guys." I came on a Damnation Versus episode talking to you wearing a Dinner Celestial Birds t-shirt. I said to you, you should book Dinner Celestial Birds. If you've got the space to give a band an opportunity, give it to Dinner Celestial Birds.
Yeah.
And you did. They packed a tent. Everybody went to see them. You booked them again because we were that popular. And now they're everywhere. I noticed today they're announced for Portals as well at the Portals Festival in London. It's like now the Dunk Festival in Belgium. Now, if you've got any sort of like progress chart, if there's ever a Gavin McInally in a Damnation shape starting point, that's the band.
Yeah. That is genuinely you.
I'm saying that with the knowledge that that's what they're telling me. I'm not doing that like, oh, look at me, pat me in the back. I'm saying that's what the band are telling me. So that is one where you're a bit like, you've went out on a limb with a great band. I even remember telling an agent, I remember sitting there, this band's got something. I mean, they've literally got something. And see now, I'm seeing that agent dealing with bands that are a fraction of the interest. Because Dinner Celestial Birds are playing Glasgow this coming Saturday, which will happen by the time this podcast comes out. I have a dozen friends going to see this. I've got Paul's flying up for bloody Bedford. We've got people, they're all going to this gig anyway because they've built that buzz about them. You know what I mean? It's like they are a very, very good post-rock band. And you're like, that's one where you can be like, okay, if there's credit going, I'll take it, right? But they deserve it. Only because they're great.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a very satisfying thing for you to do, isn't it? To help bands that are small to grow. And I did only book them because I really did only book them because you on more than one occasion told me I should book them. You know, had a quick listen, thought, yeah, this fits ArcTanGent perfectly. Gav's giving it the big guns about them. Let's book them. And yeah.
I do have that sort of ADHD about me when I get into a band. I'm like, fucking, oh, I need to find this band an agent. I need to find this band a festival. And let's be fair, when Puskar had to pull out Damnation's the pre-show last year at short notice, we offered them. So it's not like I'm not putting my money where my mouth is. It's like a band I believed in when what's left of those slots really. And we drafted them in at last minute, and they packed that stage as well, and that's like 1,800 capacity that stage, and it was pretty busy. So it's not just. I mean, end of the day, I could be here talking. I don't have any power over this situation. I could be here talking about a band that are just shit, and you're going to list them, they're just shit. And that's the end of that conversation. No fan's going to follow it up. No fan's going to buy the vinyl or the t-shirt or go and check them out. But like Gav's away in one. He's too many disco biscuits and he's away talking absolute nonsense. So you're a bit like, right, no, but that's not the case. Dinner Slash Your Birds are fucking spectacular. Go and check them out.
Absolutely, do it. And that is, I think that's breaking bands just as much as idols. Really, it's like it's just as important, and that niche end of the music industry that we partly exist in, where it's not Carcass and it's not Frank Carter and the Rattlesnakes. It's something way that's never going to be massive. Is just as important.
How do you feel about? I mean, because obviously this is focused pretty heavily in the UK scene, but how do you feel about like international bands? Because I feel like that's probably where Damnation's played a bigger part, and never break the bands. Because the time you actually get a band internationally to come to Damnation, they've established themselves with labels and agents and probably decent sales in their own territory, their own country. Yeah. But to bring them to the UK and like breaking them in a sense of here's what they are to the UK audience. How do you feel about that?
I mean, yeah, it's less of a thing of like battering people repeated years over the head with it. But yeah, bands coming and doing, like we have a bunch of Japanese or American, we had loads of, I mean, all countries in Europe, and yeah, getting them in front of a decent sized crowd for the first time, like second stage at ArcTanGent, 3,000 people is, well, if you're in a niche band, that's quite a significant audience of the UK. Like you play on the main stage at ArcTanGent, if you play to 8,000 people, you've basically got most of the audience of the UK that are into that sort of music in one place. I mean, there aren't many people left, I don't think.
That's the thing as well, isn't it? You get a band that come across, and let's say the examples for us in recent years, like We Lost the Sea, Downfall of Gaia, Frail, High Command, hopefully this year, Gillian Carter. It's like, if you come to Damnation and you play even the second or third stage, and you can get 1,500 people to 2,000 people there to see you, there is no hope, with all due respect, there's no hope that your full UK tour is attracting that in total. I mean, you go and do 10 dates, you're not getting 200 people. I mean, We Lost the Sea, take that one out because they actually did go and smash London in a Monday night and sold 600 tickets. But your Gillian Carters, your High Commands, your Downfall of Gears, they are not doing 200 tickets per night regionally. So getting to come in and do that, and you're a bit like, and then what comes with the likes of Damnation is you get all the press, Kerrang's there, Metal Hammer's there, Distorted Sound, all your podcasts, they're all available to you. And then if you're willing to go and make the effort to make it happen, they will be there and they will talk to you. We have professional photographers and videographers that are paid for by Damnation to make sure your set's covered. So you will have, what would cost you, I don't know, 200 quid, 250 quid per person. That's there as well. So you can really lean on that. And those assets are available to you afterwards. You can take that video, you can take those photographs, you can use that press, and you can really make it in for you. Or you could have came across and done 5 dates in the UK and maybe get 50 people per night, no press, no photography, and grind it out that way, which is, I'm not saying the way you shouldn't do it, but if we're talking about how you're helping bands get some profile in the UK, if you're international, that's what Damnation does. And I can only imagine in a bigger scale way, like your 2,000 Trees and ArcTanGent. I don't know as much about 2,000 Trees as I know about ArcTanGent. Is there a lot of that? Do you get your full efforts and that at 2,000 Trees, or is that more UK based emerging rock?
No. There's loads of touring bands from America and Europe. There's a big difference though between the two again, in that 2,000 Trees will be a touring band with an agent. Even the bands that I'm paying, like let's say £1,000 to, that are on tour from America, they'll have like 1 or 2 albums out. They'll be doing some other UK dates around it, and they've planned their tour around the fact that they've decided that their music fits, of all the UK festivals, fits best at 2,000 Trees. There's a bunch of sort of rock genres where 2,000 Trees is the obvious choice of festival rather than Slam Dunk or Download. and those bands will plan their tour around it. But that'll be very much like the agents coming to me being like, "Oh, this band, they're signed to this label. They're really on the up. They're doing really well. Check them out. You'll love them." And me going, "Yeah, that's great. Let's get them over." Whereas, and that's very agent driven. That I don't often.
Let's give the agents credit, the good agents credit where it is due with that, because good agents notice that. Good agents will say, they will literally plan the start of a tour or the end of a tour with Damnation in mind, because they're looking at their band saying,
Yeah,
we don't want to do the 7 dates in the UK with a grind of everything that's involved in it and play accumulatively to 342 people by the time we went here and smashed a week in hotels and vans and everything else, when we could just land in here, do Damnation, get 1,000 fans, get the merch sales, and get back at the UK within a day with a big press profile.
Yeah, absolutely. And they are, and loads of the main rock agents are planning those tours around 2000 Trees, definitely. Whereas, as I've said before, ArcTanGent is much more, they don't tend to do much in the UK. If anything, they'll do the festivals around Europe, the metal festivals around Europe. Now, one thing I really love to do at ArcTanGent is, because I am like a real music obsessive in terms of my own personal listening. If I didn't run festivals, I'd sit at home listening to music all day long. And discovering bands has become way more exciting now I do run festivals, because I can literally discover a post-metal band from like Wyoming and send them an email and be like, look, no one's heard of you. This album's fucking great. If you can somehow get, I can't pay all of your, I can't pay the few grand it's going to cost you to get over here. But if you can try and get some other dates to work or get your label to pay or something, I want you to come to ArcTanGent. So there's like 20 or 30 bands at ArcTanGent this year that are just like, I've just discovered them and think they're really great and have asked them to come over and play. And that is a massively satisfying thing to do. And hopefully some of them will like grow and become, the next Cult of Luna or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah.
We'll see.
I mean, talk just because it's interesting when you say that as well. Because let's take the Russian fucking war out of the situation. Let's talk just music with us. Do you know the band Show Me a Dinosaur?
No, I know the name, but not really.
And they're like, it's just Russian post metal, but it's absolutely class. And it's like one of those ones where you're a bit like, for Damnation, it would be a push. I mean, Downfall again. I mean, is it any harder to try and sort than We Lost the Sea for Australia? Probably not. Now it is, obviously, for the circumstance in Russia. But with that notwithstanding, you're like, they're one of those bands where that's exactly what my offer would be if this nonsense wasn't going on in Russia. I'd be like, we'd love to have you. We'd love that on that third stage. You'd be spectacular.
Yeah.
But there's no chance you're getting, I don't know, 6 flights for Russia, hotels, ground transport. I mean, I don't know if you're worth any tickets in the UK whatsoever, but there's an opportunity here for a slot at Damnation. And that sounds exactly what you're thinking is when you hear these bands, like that excitement comes. How many times do you hear a band and you quickly go to Google to see if they're from the UK?
Yeah, right, exactly. Because then it's like, oh, amazing, happy days.
Yeah, oh my God, I think, yes, boom, these are guys are getting a slot. And you go, no, it's fucking Russia or Wyoming or somewhere.
Yeah. And there's quite an ethical thing there, which I find really hard, in that basically you can't afford to pay the band.
Yep.
I mean, I am paying the band, but not, I mean, how much, you live in Texas, there's 5 of you in the band. Realistically, how much do we think it actually costs to get to Fernhill Farm from Texas for one show? I mean, it's got to be, what, 2-3 grand?
That's the best part. I mean, usually when we price up, because sometimes you'll get a bigger American band and you make the offer for a bigger American band and they want the flights, the ground transport and the hotels. So Paul and I will be straight on the Skyscanner, try to find their nearest hotel, nearest airport, try to get them into Manchester instead of going down to London. And you're a bit like, a lot of the times it can be the best part. Return can almost be $1,000 per flight.
Per person, yeah.
So you're a bit like, oh, you get 5 on this, $5,000 right off the bat. And I mean, like, that's not, no one's pretending. And here's like credit to So Hideous, another band that would be spectacular at ArcTanGent. They guys, I mean, I think that they do quite well in their personal lives. They're not a touring band, but they just took a hit. They just took a hit. They're like, what can you offer us? And a pretty reasonable fee. If that band was for the UK, they would not be getting the fee that we paid because we did have some sort of acceptance of the fact that they were going to be sharing it from their end. And they just went, you know what, we're doing it. We're doing it. We're not a band that's going to be a touring. We're not trying to be that, but to go across here and smash this to 1,500 people, it's probably an opportunity we're not getting it otherwise. And if we need to pay the price for it, then we need to pay the price, but maybe our profile will get boosted. Maybe we'll do some more album sales. Maybe the next offer we get for another festival, because we've now got these assets, as I call them. Like, you've got a photography, you've got somebody to show that here's when we played the UK and look at the row of faces that goes out of the distance. And then the following year, the same drummer, he plays in Downfall of Gear. Gaia, I'm not sure how that's pronounced. And he was delighted to come back again. Again, another one. Like, that is definitely a situation where that band lost money playing Damnation. It's guaranteed. There is no way that those 5 or 6 people get into the UK for a one-off exclusive and back at the UK unless they rode their bicycles. I mean, there's just no chance that happens. So it's like, I get what you're saying, but here's my answer to anyone who would ever say, oh, every band must be paid so they're not losing money, or you're a bloodsucker or whatever. I lost money last year's Damnation. I worked for a year for free. I technically lost money. Don't tell me that your band's worth more after I'm the one that paid the price for putting the band on, you know what I mean? So like, that band can go tomorrow and play a gig in Manchester, and the chances are you couldn't cover the costs. Be it you couldn't cover the venue hire, the security guard at the front, the sound man, the bar staff to come into the venue. And if you can't do that, then there's no point coming to Damnation saying, oh, well, we need $4,500 to make that work with us losing money. I mean, great, if we're all in this just to make money, well, you should be a wedding band, because that's how you make money in music. And ultimately, a lot of us are doing it at a loss at times.
Yeah, I mean, it's a sad fact of the industry, that the festival industry, that the lot, most of the money for the bands is concentrated in the top. For me, out of the 150, it's the top 10 bands getting paid all that money, really.
Yep.
And the bottom 100 of the 150 are all not on great fees. And it's tricky. I think you got to pay the bands, and I always do, but paying everyone to cover all their costs is basically doesn't happen at any festival.
It's not viable. It's no. Totally not viable. And when you think about it, like, let's just pat ourselves in the back a wee bit more than we do already. It's like, we do pay the bands. When you see a lot of these tours and a lot of these support bands are paid to be in that tour, and not even in a dirty sense of give me 10 grand and you get it. It's like bus contribution, ad contribution. It's like, I know, but what if we never wanted on the bus? We still need to pay, mate. You know what I mean? So it's like, you get something for it, but ultimately those headline bands are trying to make something work and you're paying it. So we don't do that. And okay, does it cover everybody's costs? No, it doesn't. But is it financially viable? Unfortunately, in this scene that we operate in, to cover everybody's costs, no, it's not. And a lot of bands, it's such a valid argument. I mean, it's like you go into Twitter and you say, I had to play that festival and it cost us £460. I mean, it's quite a powerful argument, isn't it? I mean, you've went and done a day's work and you've lost money from it, but ultimately, in my case, so did the promoter.
Yeah. I mean, it feels like we could do a whole podcast on this alone. It's quite a tricky issue, I think.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, but let's not be down in the.
No, we're talking. Why are we even fucking got onto this? This is the first podcast where we've disappeared.
You slowly saw the life just drain it. Is when
who's in charge here, Gav? We've disappeared off the topic of the amazing breaking of bands that we've been doing.
I suppose, well, like, let's go full circle with it. As you say, the top 10 bands take the chunk of them. They're also the bands responsible. I've got the weight on their shoulders to do those ticket sales. More often than not, they're the bands that have done the hard yards, that have put it in and made fantastic music and then put a system around them that's allowed them to get to the scale of being a headliner. But ultimately, the bands that are not getting paid those fees, those are the bands now that are getting the platform underneath those Mogwais and Meshuggahs and Explosion in the Sky, those platforms to go out there and try and make them the next. Mogwai, Explosion Sky, Meshuggah. And that's a podcast in itself because we will talk about like headliners of the future and what we want to see because that's another problem where we need to address ultimately. So not every 2 years you see Electric Wizard or Carcass headline in Damnation. It's important that we get our own homegrown or any sort of goddamn fucking headliners, just people coming fresh blood that's come through, which at the highest level, downloads pushing through now with Alexa, Bring Me Horizon.
Yeah. Let's talk about that soon, very soon, maybe next.
Maybe.
It feels like we should cover,
So
because it seeks nicely from this.
you want to tell us more about your really weird taste in music and Hex Vessel?
Yeah, man. So Hex Vessel they released an album last year called Polar Veil, which is absolutely outstandingly, amazingly fucking brilliant. They're quite hard to explain because they're rooted in black metal. It's kind of a black metal album, but the guy is a real singer. It's actually the lead singer from Grave Pleasures as well. So he is he's got a set of pipes on him, this guy, proper vocalist. And it's kind of like there's some like black metal going on in the background, but this guy's singing like real melodies over the top. And it is an album that sounds like no one else, I think. And it's like a real piece of work on its own. So, I can't recommend it enough. It was in my top 10 favorite albums of last year. Polar Veil, Hex Vessel playing main stage ArcTanGent on the Saturday this year.
But they also have a weird back catalogue, don't they? I mean, so they've got there's this almost like folky element, like weird sort of. Am I right in thinking that there's some sort of link to the band that played Damnation back in the day, Nagura Bungent, the Romanian band?
Maybe. So there's this guy, Matt McNerney, I think his name is. He's the main guy and he's the singer. And he's actually English, but he lives in Finland. And I think I picture him, I don't even know what he looks like. I picture him living in the forest, like, and he's, I don't know, living in rags in the forest, writing black metal. And basically, so sometimes it's folky black metal, sometimes they've been through quite a few different, they did an album about 5 or 10 years ago, which I really loved, and its name escapes me now. But yeah, they do a bit of different stuff, and he's in other bands, more than one other band. One of which is Grave Pleasures, which is like, I mean, Grave Pleasures are really I don't know, a gothy punk band. Yeah. So the guy, I'm going to go up to him at ArcTanGent and say, mate, fucking what are they putting in the water in Finland? Because who's in two bands that sound so different and both are that good?
You really love Grave Pleasures, eh? You really fucking love Grave Pleasures.
yeah, I do.
So because that, am I right in thinking that band was previously Beast Milk that had all the buzz?
Yes.
And then what? So did something happen with Beast Milk that they became Grave Pleasures?
I don't entirely know the story, but I think it's basically the same band and they sound the same as well. So yeah.
And where are Grave Pleasures now? Are they still an active band?
No, because I tried to book them for ArcTanGent this year, and he said to me that they're not currently touring. They released an album last year, but they're not currently touring. So I don't really know. And they're not an ArcTanGent band, but I was just like, fuck it.
Yeah, I thought they're a James Scarlett band.
Yeah.
Makes you an ArcTanGent band. Did you see Grave Pleasures headline the stage at Damnation?
I did not. I think it was before I knew who they were.
Again, mate. Again, I don't want to make this a recurring theme, mate. But that's clearly
you are making it a recurring theme.
Oh, so like just so on the record so far. So I taught you about Amenra, Bosk, and Grave Pleasures.
You don't get Grave Pleasures. I just said I didn't see them. You're not getting it.
You don't get Grave Pleasures. Magic. Right, okay. I'm glad at least this week you gave people music you could listen to.
What's your recommendation?
My recommendation, I've been mentioning them a few times this one, and I felt like let's go with another breaking back. Downfall of Gaia, fuck knows how you pronounce it. German, blackened, progressive post-metal. David also added crust. It's like there's a lot going on. It's fast, punky. If you're a fan of early Death Heaven, if you're a fan of Vigdud, or Vigdud, if that's how it's pronounced, this is a band for you. Hopefully, a lot of folk caught them last year's Damnation. Just powerful, fantastic black and post metal. It's fantastic. Do you know them? Have you yet to check them out?
I checked them up. Me and you talked about them actually when I was working out how many bands I was going to steal from your lineup from last year. So we did have a conversation. I did check them out. I really liked it. Really good. They would work at ArcTanGent,
They
definitely.
would. They definitely would. The latest album's out. There's a track. It gives you existence of awe. I think it's maybe the top track in Spotify just for an easy way in. They're not a band that they're not wildly different album to album. I think once you hear one track, you know if you're into it or you're not into it. But as I say, if Vigdud are a kind of band that you're into, especially Vigdud's most recent album,
I love that album. Fucking
I
great, that album.
there's always blood at the end of the road. Is that?
Yeah.
And they were great in the main stage as well. That's an ArcTanGent main stage when you walk in and goes, what the fuck are these guys doing here? I mean, that's a proper. I mean, I knew. I mean, we booked them out. I knew what I was getting into, but there was definitely some faces of Jesus Christ, this is extreme for 2 in the afternoon.
That was again an example of me just going, I really like that album. I'm going to put them on the main stage.
They were fantastic, absolutely fantastic. So, Downfall of Gaia, go and give that one a listen. Give Hexway. So I feel like both of these recommendations have got a touch of that eccentric black metal about them. So
Yeah.
if that kind of stuff's up your street, then go and check it out. We forgot to mention Lowe's Brews.
Oh, I was just going to say that, and he's just sent me some hot sauces as well. So I should probably say a massive thanks to Lou.
Have you tried them yet?
They arrived. Yeah, I have. I had the Damnation one actually. Very nice. So I got 4 Creeper ones, the Damnation one, and the Curse These Metal Hands one. So very kind of Lou to send that over, and also make us excuse me, a 2000 Trees and an ArcTanGent one. So yeah,
I'm sure they will be.
Check out Lou's Brews. And his amazing hot sauces. And the code is POD15. I've learned after
POD15, mate. You're smashing this now.
I've arrived.
Do you need me to show up next week, or have you got this now? Is it covered?
Feeling really proud.
POD15. I paid for my order. And I got a nice Garlic Sriracha one that I think's a new one that he's done, which is lovely. Also, go and give that man some support for no other reason than because his fucking sauces are great. So just do them for that. For no other reason. Go and get yourself 15% off. Go and get yourself a wee Bosk, a wee Damnation, a wee Garlic Sriracha, or some creeper sauce. And once again, thank you very much for tuning in, guys. We massively appreciate it, and we'll be back next week.
Thanks, guys.